So in this particular use case, right? So how you are handling the different schemas? So how you are handling, like, because every different file formats have different schemas. So are you doing
Exactly.
any kind of validation or maintaining some registries where you are first validating and then only processing? How you are,
Exactly. So we keep a separate schema registry.
and in the Snowflake part you mentioned that is again managed by the application team or yours?
Yes, exactly.
So the application team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the Airflow part where we are orchestrating the whole pipeline, will that again be managed by your team?
Yes. Yeah.
So what is your Airflow dev look like? So how you are, is it batch run or how is it like all this? Is it batch run or is it like a streaming run? So do you, how many different environments you currently have in your project?
So we have the development environment and a testing environment and the production.
So do you have maintaining three different files of Terraform for all this environment or a single file? But how you will basically eliminate the duplication in the JSON file before reading it to the data?
Mhm. That's a good question. So maybe the thought process which I have right now is to create a UDF.
Have you also faced like small file problems issue in the source first round of mock interview? So before starting, can you quickly introduce yourself, where you are currently working, what is your experience with the data engineering?
Yeah, sure. So I currently have close to 5 years of experience with data engineering. So previously I worked in a company where I had like 3 years of experience. So over there, so we handle few projects which is related to like migration from on-premise to AWS cloud platform. So where I have good hands-on touch with a lot of AWS services with regards to data analytics. And later on, so I moved on to a service-based organization, so where I work with a client. So over there, currently, I'm building a pipeline, so which is very adaptable, which can be used by any producer team to produce their data in such a way that they don't need to do a lot of coding. So rather, they use the configurations and with minimal coding just for the transformations, they would be able to have their data in the data lake architecture. So for this, so we have used the tech stacks like PySpark for processing and EMR for the platform to run the PySpark applications. And we used Airflow to orchestrate the complete workflow. And we used Terraform to build the infrastructures. And we used Jenkins to build the CI/CD pipelines. And we used Lake Formation, so which is for the data governance to the table, which is available in our S3. And we have used Athena to visualize the data and Snowflake over where we created external tables on top of these files. And so that's how about my project currently.
So you explained like you have designed some template which can be used by different data sets, right? So can you elaborate more on that, like what kind of things it supports and how easy it is to scale and customize it to the other needs?
Exactly. So before I proceed, so I'll let you know about the problem statement so that while I explain the project, so it can be more relevant. So the problem statements is, so in our organization, so we had like multiple teams, so which are working on different kind of data sets and file formats. So their end goal was to make this data available in Snowflake so that the BI reporting team and the data science team can consume the data and proceed with their own algorithms and such like that. So since it is like multiple team and working with the different data sets, so they use their own tech stacks and own data pipeline to bring the data. So why every team has to use their own data pipelines and always has to do the coding, and there is a lot of maintenance involved in each teams. So we thought like, so let's make everything be unified. So for that, we have created this project. So this pipeline, like what it does is in PySpark application, so we have segregated two things. So one is the reader file and another is the mapper file. So what this reader file does is, so whatever the file format which you pass in, so in our class, so we have defined a lot of classes which can read any kind of file format. So if it is a CSV, so we will create a CSV child class, so which can read the CSV format or proto file or JSON or something like that. So whenever we get the data in our staging layer, so there will be a transformations happening, and it brings the transformed file format into Parquet in our bronze layer. And from the bronze layer, so again there will be a different class which is mapper. So where the producer team so write their own logic to bring the required fields in our silver layer. So from the silver layer, the end user team can consume the data and do their either on the reporting or the data science team can apply their algorithms and all those things.
So in this particular use case, right? So how you are handling the different schemas? So how you are handling, like, because every different file formats have different schemas. So are you doing any kind of validation or maintaining some registries where you are first validating and then only processing? So how you are doing?
Exactly. So we keep a separate schema registry. So in schema registry is a place where you define all your file formats and what are all the columns and what are all the data for data types and all those things. So every time I consume the data, so I try to validate the data with the schema registry. And only when if it passes the validations, then only we will proceed on to the next level of transformations.
Which particular services or how you are managing the schema registry? Are you using some services there or writing your customer application?
So we have written a custom application, so where we only define the schema in a JSON format. So our base application will try to fetch the schema and validate things.
So how you are in your case, because this is your responsibility for a generic template, right? And you are processing different format. So what if from the source team, you get to know like there are some schema changes, right? And you need to process that. So how that particular flow works here?
So it's not like they have to always get onto the team which has developed the pipelines. So rather they have they can pitch in to the application directly, and whenever there is a change required in the schema, so they can look onto this and they can raise a PR. So if it doesn't have any compliance or any issue conflicts, so we will merge the PR into the master.
We didn't get that validation part here because that schema validation will fail in your case, right? You have to write some process which will update the schema and then process it accordingly, right?
Maybe let me explain it in a brief way. So the schema registry is a separate repository. So this repository will have the list of datasets which is going to pass through this pipeline. So each pipeline teams will have their own folders, and within that, so they will define the schema in a JSON format. So whenever at the initial stage, so if the producer team and consumer team has defined a contract, like these are all the 10 fields which I will produce and these are all the 10 fields which I have to consume, and that contract will be defined as a JSON. And if there is any new incoming data, data type, or like a new columns or the existing column is getting deleted, so for that they will raise a PR, and the person from the consumer team and person from the producer team so approves it, and later on only get merged with master.
So in your case, what different type of transformations you are performing in your PySpark?
Okay, so in PySpark, so we just wanted to keep it very simple. So we are not like doing any kind of aggregations or joins or something like that. So we just wanted to make sure this aggregations and joins are happening in Snowflake, and within the PySpark application, so we only extract the required fields from the source file, and if there is any like if there is any refinement required for the data sets, so if there is any null values, so if I have to like fill the null values with some zeros, or if it is an empty string, if it is an empty string, so if I have to replace with some other string, so that thing or kind of transformations will be happening in this PySpark application.
But that will be, this business logics will be separate for different files, right? Suppose if the source team are giving you, there are 4 source teams which are giving you CSV file, right? That business logics related to this will be different for the different team. So how you are managing those business logics?
So for that, yeah, exactly. So for that purpose, so in our PySpark application package, so we have created a package. One is for reader. So this reader file, what it does is, so any data producer team can have their own data set. So it can be proto file, JSON, or CSV. So they write the class to read that particular data set. So that files will be available in the like the reader class. And in the mapper class, so whenever the new producer team wants the kind of transformation, So they create their own class, and within the class, so they will define what are all the business logic and what kind of transformations has to be taken, and they return the data frame. And that
Do you
data
have your
frame would be
involvement? Do you have your involvement in the mapper part as well, or only in the first part?
not really. So we, as a team, develop this pipeline, and the transformations and all those things will be taken care by the producer team.
And in the Snowflake part you mentioned, that is again managed by the application team or your team?
Yes, exactly.
So the application team, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Airflow part where we are orchestrating the whole pipeline, will that again be managed by your team?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your Airflow that look like? So how you are, is it batch run or how is it like all this? Is it batch run or is it like a streaming run?
So most of the so I would say not most, 100% of the data sets are on the batch format. So even for the Airflow DAG, so we wanted to make it simple. So didn't want like any team to create the DAG from the initial stage again and try to do the task definitions and all those things. So rather we kept a constant template, and there will be like some variables which the producer team can provide, so which will be passed on to the template when the time of DAG generations. So consider like so I said like there is two layers available in our data lake architecture. One is the bronze and another is the silver. So for the bronze layer of transformation, so we have this bronze instance DAG. So there it will be a standard template like the DAG will start, and the second task would be it will check if the files available in the staging layer, and if it is available, it will call the reader class of a particular file data set file format, and then it will move on to the silver layer. So this is the standard template for every team. So the only thing which is differing is the S3 file path and the data sets names and all those things. So in order to like generate this DAG dynamically, so we used a dynamic template creating tool, which is cookie cutter. So with the help of cookie cutter, so we can pass this parameters of like the S3 location and the dataset name in the CI/CD pipeline. So that will help us to create this dynamic datasets for DAGs for each dataset.
And like you mentioned, you're using Jenkins for the CI/CD. So what is your CI/CD pipeline look like?
Okay. So in our CI/CD pipeline, so we run it on a parameterized. The basically the help of this CI/CD is to package our PySpark application. So that is one process. And other thing is to deploy our instances. So the instances, what I mean is the Airflow DAG instances. So every time when a new producer team pitches in, so they create their own DAG instances for their team. And the other thing is for the infrastructure deployment. So infrastructure deployment in the sense, so whenever we are creating a application, so it should be running on Airflow, and EMR serverless has to be provisioned, and other things will have to be provisioned. So these things and all, like we kept it as part of our Jenkins, and it takes parameterized input. So whenever if we need to like provide a release for our package, so we in the parameters, so we mention like release package, and if you want to deploy instance, so I will choose the parameter as deploy instance or something like that.
So is the Jenkins instance running on AWS or on-premise?
It's on AWS.
So like AWS is also services like code pipeline, code build. So why they are using Jenkins instead of those native AWS services?
So we could have used it, but the reason is like they wanted to keep it very simple with the features which is provided by Jenkins. So that's why. So on a whole, like the complete organization is using the Jenkins open source. So they just wanted to keep that without migrating into this code pipeline.
And like what different AWS services are you deploying with the help of Terraform?
So apart from that, so we deploy this Airflow and EMR cluster, and so with this pipeline, only this Airflow and EMR serverless.
So what is the flow that you're using? Suppose you are doing the Terraform deployment, right? And it get deployed in production, and suppose there is some bug, right, with the current release you are planning. So what is your rollback strategy in that case?
With respect to the infrastructure, you're asking?
Infrastructure, yes.
Okay. So every time, like we have separate stages in our Jenkins for this Terraform deployment. So first, we will just check the Terraform plan, what exactly it is going to do, and so one of our manager will review like what exactly the change it is going to be made, and only if he is convinced with the change with the plan, whether it is going to change the infrastructure or it is going to destroy infrastructure or something like that. So once he proceeds, so it just goes to apply and other stages and all.
But in this field, it like deploy your infrastructure, right? And say there is some XYZ reason by which you need to roll back and you need to move it to the previous stable release. So in that case, is there any pipeline you have configured to do that?
Yeah. So we have this Terraform in our Git repository, right? So this provides as a version control. So whenever if there is a new change, so we can revert that particular change alone, and we run our pipeline again, so that there will be a rollback to the infrastructure.
And how you are managing the state of the Terraform?
I believe Terraforms has remembers the state of the infrastructure automatically. I believe. I'm not sure
You
about the
need to
internet.
store it.
Yeah, we
You
need to
need to
store it.
specify. There are two ways, like where you can store it local or you need to store it in a remote location. So,
Exactly.
are you aware about Terraform loop thing? Terraform loop.
No, I'm not much aware of it.
Okay. Right. And are you aware, like in Terraform, suppose if we have some resources which we only need to provision to certain environment, say only in production, but not in the lower environment. So how we can write our Terraform code in such a way that, so if only my pipeline is running in production, then only deploy that, otherwise not deploy it. So how can we enable that in Terraform?
Okay. So I'm not sure if I could do it in Terraform, but in Jenkins file. So when I'm trying to write a Groovy script, so I can read what environment it is going to deploy. So based on the environment, so I will just either initiate the Terraform stages, or I will choose to skip the stages.
So do you, how many different environments you currently have in your project?
So we have the development environment and a testing environment and the production.
So do you have maintaining 3 different files of Terraform for all this environment or a single file?
It will be a single file. So we wanted to maintain the consistency between all the environment, so that whenever there is a new so whenever we are trying to process something new or test something new, it has to be consistent across the environment. So we made sure of it.
Okay. So coming to this Spark only, right? So other than those, have you used any other transcription in your previous projects?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
So what different type of Spark project you have worked on in your previous company?
So in my previous company, so we have written like the SpicePark exclusively for some transformations from the main data source, and we bring it on the data lake architecture. So it involved like a lot of different data sets, and as well as the data types. So we deal with array. Sometimes the structured types will be there, and sometimes it can be even an XML file or JSON or something like that.
So what different type of challenges you faced during this project, even in the current project and the previous project? What different challenges you faced and how you overcome them?
So the challenges we faced is defining the architecture. So when we wanted to develop a pipeline, so which has to be extensively used by different teams, so we were not sure exactly how we were gonna implement architecture like that. So if it is exclusively for one team and we understand the data projects, so it is very easier for us to create a pipeline. But when it has to be an adaptable pipeline, so we had to look for like a lot of open source projects and how they have defined everything and all those things. So that was a good learning for us from like multiple open source project, and we try to implement the same in ours.
So any data issue you faced during this development piece?
So in the transformation, I would say like so whenever there is a problem with the data sets, so it fails in the EMR pipeline. So it was somewhat difficult for us to look onto the logs and to find like where exactly this issue has happened. So to make it like replicate the same in the local and all those things were like somewhat difficult. So that problem we try to overcome with a lot of logging mechanisms within our PySpark application, so that we can understand like where exactly the point it is failing and for which record it has been failing.
Okay. So say a scenario like you are processing your data set for a particular day, right? And out of those, because of your validation, only some of the reports are getting processed while other get failed. So what would be your strategy in order to design that kind of pipeline? Will you mark the
Okay.
pipeline as failed or only process the successful? So what would be your strategy?
So in this case, so I will segregate my data sets into two. So one is the success transformation, another is a failure transformation. So if it is a success transformation, so I will process it to the next layer, which is the silver layer. And if it fails the validation, so I don't have to like ignore it or something like that. So I have to keep a track of like what exactly the problem is with the data sets. So I route that particular failed transformation files into a separate bucket, and from that bucket so we can visualize what exactly the problem has been, and we try to patch the data set again, and we can re-ingest it again into the pipeline.
So how will you enable, like whenever there is any failure, you will get notified. So what different services of AWS you will use to implement that strategy? Like right from writing it to a bucket and then sending a notification.
Yeah. So for that purpose, so we have used Datadog dashboard. So whenever like there is a success file, so we try to log what are all the records which is success and what are all the records which has been failed. So based on that, so from the Datadog dashboard, so we'll be able to visualize how many records has been passed and failed. And in addition to that, so we have this put metrics task. So this metrics task will like trigger this Snowflake webhook, Slack webhook. So in the Slack, so we'll be able to get notified whenever there is a problem with the particular transformations.
And how much is the latency between the logs in the Datadog and with your current process? So what is the latency?
I haven't like looked on like what exactly the difference. So most of the times I haven't looked on to the Datadog like at a very very initial level when the pipeline phase, but I'm not sure like what could be the latency. I
But
haven't
in your
noticed.
case, it is implemented using Datadog. You will
Yeah.
get notified through Datadog.
No. We will not get. So from the Datadog is a
Monitoring.
dashboard for it. Yeah. So only the development team looks monitor onto it. But if there is a problem, I will get notified through Slack instantly.
Okay. And for what use cases are you using Elasticsearch and Kibana dashboards?
Okay. So our client was having like a data pipeline which is built on top of Java Spring Boot application. So which is actually a streaming pipeline. So whenever this application processes the streaming pipeline, so it tries to log everything and it puts it into the Elasticsearch, and it can be visualized through Kibana. So whenever there is a problem, so we look onto the Kibana on a dashboard to visualize what exactly is happening for each of the applications and how the data flow is happening. All those things.
So how the Elasticsearch is integrated with the logs in the cloud?
So in each of the application which it is running, right? So it has its own agent which can read the logger file, and it pushes the data into the Elasticsearch. And from Elasticsearch, we'll be able to visualize it from Kibana.
So coming with different file formats have you used in PySpark?
PySpark, so we have worked on with Protofile, JSON, CSV, and in my previous organization, I have even used XML. And yeah.
So what would happen if you're reading a JSON file, right, from a source, and suppose the JSON file contains some duplicate keys? So what would happen to your PySpark job in that case? Will it process it or will it give an error?
I think it gives the errors because like whenever we are trying to create a data frame out of JSON, so there is an exception called as ambiguous column in Spark. So if there is multiple key, this problem arises.
And how will you handle that? Any thought?
So I think it is more important to do the validation. So before creating the data frame, if it is having any duplicates, so we have to eradicate before it gets into the Spark application, I believe.
But how you will basically eliminate the duplication in the JSON file before reading it to the data?
Mhm. That's a good question. So maybe the thought process which I have right now is to create a UDF, so which can read the JSON file and check like if there is any keys having if there is any files having duplicate keys, and if there is any duplicate, so I stop the process before the PySpark application proceeds to create the data frame out of it.
But again, like, is there any native thing through RDD or maybe data frame you can implement? Because what is the disadvantage of UDF here?
Yeah, so with UDF, so you will not get the benefit of optimizations, though, which Catalyst Optimizer provides you. Okay, I think I have to look onto it. So for further options,
Really?
I'm not sure.
Have you also used RDD in your project other than data frames?
No, we extensively use only the data frames.
So what are the advantages of data frame over RDD?
Okay, so RDD is actually the basic unit, the data structures which the Spark holds, and data frame is an API which is built on top of RDD. So it is like a high level code, and whenever the Spark application is compiling, so it converts this high level code into RDD, and it tries to put some lot of optimizations when it is converting it into RDD. So which we might not be aware when we are writing the RDD code explicitly.
Okay. So you also mentioned like you're using Snowflake external tables in order to further process the data and do the transformation. So what is the disadvantages of the external table?
So external table is something like so you have the data residing on your S3 bucket, and from that your Snowflake will create a pipe. From that, it will read as a table. So I think like so there will be a little latency than the internal table, and with the external table, what could be the other problems is. I think that's the disadvantage I see. I'm not sure if
All the tables you are currently is the external only, or are you also loading the data into Snowflake at home? Other than
there are a few requirements like in Snowflake. So we have different layers. So the landing zone, so the easel or something like that. So if it is directly need to be like looked on to the landing zone, so it is just created as an external table. But if we want it on a easel layer, so we insert the external table into easel, and from that the reporting team visualize the data or something like that.
Okay. So are you also working on the data modeling aspect there?
Not extensively, but I have like a few ideas around it.
Okay. So onto the Spark again, right? So if what is the use case of cache in PySpark?
Okay. So in PySpark, so whenever so we are initiating action, so it performs the starting from the state 0. So all the transformations which is already been executed by the stage action 1 will be again performed by the action 2 as well. So in order to like to stop it from proceeding again from the 0th level, so we create an intermediate cache. From that, the Spark application will proceed ahead with the other transformations.
Okay. I mean, what scenario should we not use cache?
So this cache is something so which stores the data in your memory. So if the transform data is like very huge and which can't be held in your memory, at that time maybe it can cause you out of memory issues.
Have you faced any out of memory issue in your project?
Not really. So because we tried to extensively test it on our local with the data sets and try to replicate the same in the prod environment. but we are aware like what are all the cases we might face the problem of out of memory, and we assure that case doesn't like replicate in our code project.
Okay. And also, like, what is your partitioning strategy, right? So, how you are reading your data in the PySpark and distributing it across the cluster. So, how you are partitioning it and what is your strategy?
Mhm. So the partitioning we are making it based on the execution day. So Airflow is scheduled for each day, right? So for each day, it will get a execution date. So basis on the execution date, so we segregate the years, month, and date wise data, and we partition it in our S3 bucket while writing it.
And what is the size? How you are configuring it? Like, how many files it should create in a particular partition?
So basically, like we ask our producer team to analyze on that thing. So because the producer team is the one who knows like about the data sets and about the volumes. So based on the volume, so we ask them to try some trial and error and just try to match some partition number which can be reliable for their data sets volume.
Okay, so they are
So the
handling this
most
particular part.
yeah, so the most preferred with almost all the data sets was 8, I believe, 5 to 8.
But that will again depend on different conditions, right?
Yeah, that depends on the condition.
Have you also faced like small file problems issue in the source?
Not really, because every file which we are transforming is already been processed by the streaming application, and then only we get the data. So it's always like a accumulated file.
Okay. So can you please share your screen?
Sure.
So I have shared you one problem statement over email. So if you can open that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let me check my mail. Is my screen visible?
Yes. So let me explain you the problem. So this is the table dataset which you have given. So this is basically as per the granularity of customer and product ID, right? Then there is some inventory flag whether that particular product is available or not. So yes or no is that flag. Then you have the week of the year and year of the month, right? So this is that particular data set. So this is you have to write a PySpark code, which is the requirement that is given. So here, if you see the product ID, it is like P1, P2, P3, P4, right? For P1, it is like PP2 2023 and P1 2023. So basically, you need to perform some transformation on the product ID such that if after the third character there is any such alpha characters occur like A, B, C, D, any A to Z, any such character occur, you need to replace that. So suppose P1 underscore PP, it would be P1 underscore 2023 after the transformation. Then you have to basically implement the other thing. So if inventory flag is yes, then available. So you have to create another column named as availability flag. So say for a particular customer, for a particular year of month and week, if the inventory is not available, then you have to check for the previous week for that particular customer, for that particular product, and then only you need to see if that inventory is again available or not, and accordingly put the flag in the transformation. So take some time to read the problem and let me know if any question.
Sure. Right. Sure. I think I have a question. So the first validation is transform the product ID column if after third character any word occurs. So any word in the sense it is just mentioning like
Only A to Z. A to Z you can.
okay. So apart from that, if any comes like the P20 2020,
That is loud.
got it. Okay. So is it fine if I proceed ahead with this pseudocode for this?
Yeah, you can first explain me like what you're thinking and then you can proceed to the code.
Sure. So first I will read this data frame. And so I will create a with column for the product ID, and I have to implement a regex in such a way that if there is any words coming after the split, the character 3, I will remove that, and I will merge the rest values with that. And after that, I put another with column. With that, I'll just if yes, I'll put it as 1, and if no, then there has to be a logic to check. So I think I have to use a date diff, and sorry, I think the number diff would work, I believe. So with the current record, so consider like for the last record, so my record number is 21.
So we are
And,
already on
I will
time. I
just
have
check,
put Python
the,
problem
previous
also,
record for
but
the
we don't have
P1
time
product.
for that.
And if it is 20, and 21 minus 20 is 1, and if it is 1 and yes, I will put it as yes. And if it is difference is 1, and here even here it is no, then I will put the available flag as 0.
So how you will calculate the diff, because we only want to compare it with the same product for the same customer. So that is the condition. So suppose this first row doesn't exist, and instead of that there is even P2, then we don't want to compare the last row with anyone, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let me just think about it. So I think for each record in the with column, so I have to put a where condition to check if the product name P1, which I'm checking, is also equal to the current record.
Maybe you can start writing a pseudocode and you will get an idea. Your direction is right.
Okay. Okay. I'm assuming I have already read this data frame and stored it in DF. I'm not exactly sure how what exactly the syntax is. So with the left trim, yeah, with the left trim, I'm just trying to trim the first 3 characters, and post that. So I will create a UDF, and so remove word.
Do you know there is inbuilt regex replace regex extract and different regex function in the data frame only?
Okay. Haven't used it.
So which regex function are you trying to use there?
The normal regex which is available within the Python module.
That is RE, right?
Yeah.
So what function you were trying to use there in the regex?
So in that I will check like the word which I'm getting right as a call. I will just try to check if each of the word belongs to the regex of A to Z. And if it is A to Z, I will just replace it with the empty string. Like empty space. And rest apart, I will append everything and I will return it.
Can you write a regex for this particular product ID? Just a regex.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the syntax and all.
Okay. No worries, you can proceed to the next part. Assume you have written some transformation and the product
Got it.
ID is now P1 underscore 2023.
Okay. So now it is data frame 1, data frame what? Column. So I'm just trying a pseudocode because I just forgot this case. Okay, so when equals
And at the beginning, yes. Also, the comparison that you're writing with product ID equal to product ID, what is this intended to do?
So I'm just assuming the left product ID is the one which is retrieved for the particular row, and that tries to compare with the whole of the data frame.
How that single value will be compared with the whole column?
Yeah, okay. That's
No worries, we can proceed to the next question if you can.
yeah, sure.
Okay. So I have shared you one more question, right, on the email. That is SQL question if you can open that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
So assume this is some session type of table, right? So you are getting, suppose we are going to some website, right? So we are getting some session ID. So when my session has started, when my session has ended. So we have some user ID attached to our sessions, right? So say my user ID is 0. I log in at this particular session's time and ended at this time, right? And then I have some type assigned to me. Say I am a streamer or I am a viewer. So these are according to my user ID say 0. Sometimes I have been assigned a type of streamer. Sometimes I have been assigned a type of viewer. So this is some type of session table, right? So you can see one user can have different sessions, right? and they can have different time. So what
Yeah.
we are trying to get from this particular data, so we have to see number of sessions that are completed by my user ID. Say if my user ID is 0, right? So I have basically logged in total 3 times, 1,
Mhm.
2, and 3. But I am only interested in getting those number of sessions where first time I logged in as a viewer. So say if out of this 3 user ID 0, what is my first session start time? And if corresponding to that, my session type is viewer, then only I am interested in finding the number of sessions that are completed. So assume 0, that is user ID 0, login at some time, which is as viewer, and after that it has login twice. So I would be given a count as user ID 0, count as 2. But in case my user ID 0 initially logged in as streamer, I won't be able to get user ID 0 as in the output.
Got it.
So you can go through the question statement again and try to think of the story.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think understood it. So let me just go through it. So what is the table name?
You can consider as event.
Event.
So till this point, what output you are expecting?
Okay, so here I have implemented a rank function, so which will like order by order by the session start date in a ascending order. So and I'm partitioning it by user ID. So for user ID 0, so the session start is 2020-08 and this time. And okay, I think for so okay, for user ID 0, this is the first record which he has viewed. So which is session ID 1. So he has viewed as a streamer.
Okay.
So here I have put a rank conditions. So for this session ID, it would be having the rank as 1. and the second will be this viewer will be having 2 and 3. And after I have created this rank, and I am selecting from this common table expression, so where even number is equal to 1 and the session type is equal to viewer. But for here, for the user ID 0, this condition fails because the first thing he has worked on is the streamer, not the viewer. Maybe for user ID 1. Yeah, for user ID 1, it can bring the record, and for 3, it can bring the record,
Okay.
and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you write the second part of this query?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like.
So till this point, you are getting the viewers data, right?
Correct. So maybe here. User underscore.
Why do I need to put distinct rule?
Okay, I think. Okay, sorry. So I think from here, I just assume it as a different table name. It would give it as.
In what scenario will there be a distinct requirement, if you can think?
Distinct. So there might be a case where there are 2 session start date which is having the same timestamp, and in that case maybe there will be like 2 different 2 ranks, 2 rows having the same rank. So in that time maybe we might need a distinct user ID.
Okay.
So inner join event by so underscore ID. Yes. I'm not sure if I can use the inner join in a way like from the CD I can use it. I think there should be a separate with as to create another table.
This is a subquery format, and you can again rewrite it in the CT. So that's not a logic
Got
the same, right? Okay. So here, do you think this query will work?
Let me think. Okay, I think I have it. I have to group it by session.
One, this query will give you an error if you run it.
I believe so. Um,
Ambiguous column name or something.
yes.
And again, in the inner join, what is your join condition? Again, you have not specified any condition. In the
Okay.
join. When it's in the above question only, right? You are currently doing the count star. Okay. So it will also count that first row of viewer, right? So how you will exclude that row?
First row of viewer.
So the question statement was if the first row, first login was viewer, then only we are interested in the count of
Correct.
further rows. But in your logic, you are also doing the count of all the sessions for the particular user.
Okay, so if it means like if it is a session type as a viewer, so I only have to count the number of session for viewers alone, isn't that?
On the streamer only, for the streamer only. If the first one is a
On the
viewer,
stream. Got it. Got it. Group by. Yeah, I think this will work.
yes, okay. That's all. Right. So today we are already on time.
So anything else we need to discuss, Nisha?
So we are already on time. I have a Python problem also, but we don't have time for that.